Hey everybody, I am AR Mar, and what I watched today is Book 1, Episode 11 of Avatar The Last Airbender, The Great Divide. This episode starts right off with Katara and Sokka having a pretty heated disagreement. I feel like it's a little exaggerated from their usual ones, but then again, they have been on the run for a while, so I can kind of see how tensions are getting higher. And, it leads right into the episode's theme of people with different viewpoints fighting over silly things in the end. Aang manages to break their fight, and they find the titular Great Divide, which is essentially this world's version of the Grand Canyon, with an interesting little myth about Earth spirits creating it because they were unhappy with the sacrifice they were given. Interesting way to see an explanation for a natural phenomena of this, given that this is a world where they don't have science so much as they have bending and very limited science. The dynamic between the two tribes that show up, their inherent hate of each other, it's a really, stereotypical kids show dynamic, showing prejudice without getting too dark with it and making it a bit over-exaggerated, I guess, to kind of try to show how ridiculous it can be. So, both tribes end up at the Great Divide at the same time as the Avatar and start squabbling over who gets to go first. I do quite like that when the Earthbending guide shows up, he has a really great sense of humor. He's basically just looking at them going, yeah, well, I can't guide two groups separately, but I can do one. And the two groups basically going, instead of, doing the logical thing that Aang's trying to suggest and going together, they keep fighting, going, oh, we should go first because we're better. No, we should go first because we are better. And yeah, it's kind of, I've seen this in a lot of shows. It's always kind of, at least this time, it's been done in an interesting way. It's not, sometimes when it's done in a show, it's way too cliched and way too tired, but this one at least kept it interesting with this series' signature humor and everything else we're seeing. Now, once they get into the canyon, they get attacked by one of the beasts that the guy tried to warn them about. He told them not to bring food into the canyon. Later, we find out that both tribes disregarded this based on that wonderful logic of, well, we knew they weren't going to do it, so we didn't do it. Well, we knew they thought they wouldn't obey it because they thought we wouldn't obey it, so we didn't obey it anyway. Wonderful logic. Just incredibly stupid, but wonderful. Just that inherent distrust to go on. It's like, well, if they're not going to follow the rules, I don't have to follow the rules. Before we find this out, Aang tries, splitting the groups up to try and, basically figure out what's going on with them. In a really smart move, he sends Katara with one group, he sends Sokka with the other, knowing that the two groups obviously aren't going to talk about their problems to strangers when they're too busy bickering with each other. And this is how we find out the story from each group. That from the one group, their ancestor was carrying a sacred orb and was attacked and robbed by the other group. The other group claiming that their man found the first guy, passed out on the ground and agreed to return the sacred orb to his village as an act of kindness and was wrongfully accused and imprisoned. And yeah, I can see how the two stories interact. There's this kind of, they both agree on certain details, but there's that one key detail. Was he a thief or was he a helper? That really, seems to have been lost to history. And, of course, lost to the two tribes wanting to constantly blame each other. Then, of course, when the groups come together again, they find out that naturally they find out that they both had food. They both start squabbling again, going, oh, well, we knew we couldn't trust you, well, we knew we couldn't trust you, and it's just basically this whole, look, both of you are assholes here, let's get that straight, kind of thing. Aang tries to, when they're starting to fight again, stop them with the phrase, harsh words won't solve problems, actions will. And as soon as I heard this phrase, my mind went, okay, they're gonna start fighting. Anytime you get pompous idiots like this and tell them, you can't solve it with words, only with actions, they're gonna be like, well, I got a sword, action ho! So yeah, that was kind of That was kind of predictable. I admit the animation in the fight scene really good. Like it gave me a real idea of like how skilled these two fighters were and how different their styles are. The one style being a bit more brutish and like a bit more emphasis on strength and like hard strikes, whereas the other one was a bit more finesse. But they both styles sort of countered each other in their own ways, and it was kind of fun seeing how they had mixed it all together. Of course, the situation ends being this is this kind of show. Neither of them gets badly injured or killed in any way, and more of the monsters from earlier showed up. Now, one thing I did forget to mention about the first monster attack, Sokka's boomerang was actually effective for once. I know. Try not to have a heart attack. And it continued to be effective in this scene, which I'm really glad that they're giving him this instead of the usual joke of his boomerang always being ineffective. It's kind of nice to see that he's actually starting to get it down. And then, after some clever thinking, they all band together in the fight and manage to save the day, and then go right back to fighting as soon as they're out of the canyon. Which, of course, pisses Aang right off, because, you just finished working together to save yourselves. Why can you not, for 2 seconds? And then Aang does some really clever thinking. He creates a story that, he tells the Sokka and Katara later that it was a lie, but he makes a story about 100 years ago and reframes their conflict as just a stupid children's game that over the decades got blown up and misinterpreted into this wild thing. And admittedly, it feels like something that would have been better. The story and the conflict would have worked better if this was older than that. I mean, I get that they had to play with the whole Aang has been missing for 100 years, he's 112, and he knew these guys. But as established in, the first episode, there are people, especially some really old people, who were old enough to remember around that time period. Not exactly 100 years old, but they were little kids not long after that. And it kind of, old enough to have known people that would have directly been involved in the event. So some of these tribes' elders could have known the two ancestors that they're talking about and easily contradicted Aang's story, but, kids' show will give them some leeway. Still really clever writing, it's just, little things like that sometimes bug me a little. But this also raised a great question. Is peace really peace when it's based on a lie? Even an innocent lie? Or is it worth it, seeing as this lie got both groups to put aside their blind hate for each other and actually start seeing that, there are things to like about each other. There are ways we can get along. Seriously, leave your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear them, because this is a great thing to talk about. I mean, is a lie justified when it brings peace? Is it justified when it does something good? I like to say no, but the world's more complicated than that. Nothing is black and white. Anyhow, that's what I watched today. And you folks have a great day.